Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. India is rewriting its Himalayan playbook. With a new airbase in Ladakh, just 30 kilometers from the China border, exercises in the east to build joint response and surveillance systems to lower the risk of escalation. Tonight, we'll put it all together to see how India is recalibrating its strategic posture vis-a-vis China. Meanwhile, China's economy has taken another hit. The latest data shows factory output is down and investment is slowing. The world's second largest economy is losing momentum. We'll discuss why. On Wall Street, too, it's been a bloodbath. $1 trillion wiped out in a single session. We'll look at what shook the markets. Back home, Delhi is still struggling to breathe. The pollution levels remain high and the sales of air purifiers and masks are surging. In Bihar, the election results are out. The NDA has won. We'll look at the numbers and why this election matters. In Ukraine, Russian strikes hit Kiev again. They've responded with counter-strikes. In Japan, the Prime Minister and her 3 a.m. meetings have sparked a debate on work-life balance. The US is intensifying strikes on Venezuela. They're calling it Operation Southern Spear. AI music is topping global charts, and schools in India are revising the curriculum to teach children about artificial intelligence. All this and more coming up. The headlines first.
The US approves the sale of fighter jets and other aircraft parts to Taiwan for $330 million. This is the first such transaction since President Donald Trump returned to the White House this January. The move has drawn appreciation from Taipei and anger in Beijing. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán says his government will take the European Union to court over its decision last month to phase out Russian gas imports. Budapest is the Kremlin's closest ally in the 27-nation EU, and it still depends heavily on Russian energy imports. Last month, EU countries agreed to phase out their remaining gas imports from Moscow by the end of 2027. Tanzania's president announces an inquiry into the killings that occurred during the election that saw her return to power. She has called for leniency for some protesters charged with treason. The 29th October vote was marred by allegations of rigging and government cracked, which sparked days of violent protests, killing hundreds. Thousands of doctors in England begin a 5-day strike over pay and training posts. It is the 13th such walkout by medics since March 2023. This comes amid a prolonged cost of living crisis that has sparked strikes across the UK. Teachers, nurses, ambulance workers, lawyers, train workers and border staff have all walked out over the past 3.5 years. And Greenland's parliament adopts legislation limiting foreigners' right to own property on the vast Arctic island. This follows mounting interest from US investors on the Danish territory, coveted by US President Donald Trump. Non-Danish citizens and foreign companies will only be allowed to buy property if they have been permanent residents in Greenland for the previous 2 years.
Tonight, we begin with India's border with China. 1 year ago, both sides agreed to a truce. It ended a 4-year-long military standoff. And since then, the border has stayed largely quiet. But New Delhi is not lowering its guard. Instead, it is reworking its strategy to secure the Himalayas. Earlier this week, a new airbase was operationalized in Ladakh. India's Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh, landed there himself. He flew in a C-130J Super Hercules plane. The touchdown was in Mudh, Nyoma. This is a newly completed high-altitude airbase. It is located at a height of about 13,000 feet. The base is built for fighter operations. It is located just 30 kilometers from the LAC. The LAC is the line of actual control. It's India's de facto border with China, and this new base is just 30 kilometers from this border. Reports say China has an airfield at a similar height. So with this new base, India is sending a message. It is reinforcing this front. The C-130J is not a light aircraft. It is like a giant, a flying cargo truck for the armed forces. This plane is capable of carrying troops, vehicles and equipment, and landing it at around 13,000 feet is no routine matter. It's a statement. India is sending a message that it's ready to operate large military platforms, that too close to the border with China. Reports say the new base is now operational. It expands India's ability to launch aircraft in high-altitude combat zones. And this is quite significant because in Ladakh, the terrain is tricky. Distance and time define your military response. So the closer the base, the faster the deployment and the lesser the response time. Also, this airbase is not a standalone move. It is part of a wider build-up. A week before the inauguration, India launched a major military drill. It was held in the Eastern Himalayas. These drills were conducted across multiple states. It was a tri-service operation, meaning all three wings of the armed forces were involved: the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. All of them participated. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police, ITBP, was also involved. This is a specialized police unit. It is deployed along India's border with China. The goal of this drill was synergy, to encourage coordination among land, air and specialized units. Helicopters flew, low-altitude runs, missile systems were deployed, marine commandos trained in riverine zones, and light artillery was moved by air. Reports indicate that this exercise tested India's integrated theatre concept. What does that mean? It means that all military services operating together under one command. That's what was tested. It's a model that India is refining. And this exercise was a clear signal that the eastern sector is now a priority. India wants to ensure military readiness not just in Ladakh but across the entire Himalayan arc. This comes amid a quiet shift at the border itself. Not in firepower, but in how India and China are trying to manage tensions. Last month, a report came out. It said that India and China want to reduce their trust deficit. They're trying out new methods, new confidence-building measures, including fewer foot patrols and more tech deployment. The goal is to cut back on regular patrols because that's where troops regularly cross paths. Instead, both armies, India and China, are relying on observation posts with shared visuals, cameras, electronic sensors and live feeds being monitored on both sides. And what's the goal behind this? The idea is to stop minor incidents from turning into major conflicts. Again, this is a significant shift because look at the last decade and the many standoffs we've seen. From Doklam to Galwan, with every incident, the risk of a full-blown military showdown has only increased. So both sides now want to avoid contact on the ground, reduce border friction, but at the same time maintain surveillance. The airbase in Ladakh strengthens India's reach. The exercises in the east build joint response, and the surveillance systems lower the risk of escalation. This marks a change in posture. India is moving away from old routines. In the past, physical patrols defined presence. But now the approach is different. Precision matters more than visibility. So fewer boots on the ground, but a faster and sharper response time. Because despite the calm on the border, India and China do maintain a military presence. There hasn't been a full withdrawal of forces. What's worse, there is no clearly demarcated border. So both sides still have large deployments along the LAC. Given this backdrop, the recent moves show a recalibration, a clear shift in methods and tactics. India is drawing up a new Himalayan playbook. Meanwhile, in China, the economy is losing steam. The latest economic data was released today and it shows a worrying trend. China is slowing down faster than expected. Broadly, there are three reasons for this. Number one, there's a big drop in investment. Number two, a slowdown in China's factories. And number three, weak spending by consumers. We talked about spending yesterday, so tonight we'll focus on the other two factors, and we'll start with investment. There's a drop in fixed asset investment. What does that mean? Fixed assets, as the name suggests, are big long-term purchases made by a business. Things like land to build a factory, or machines to boost production, or trucks to deliver goods. These are not your everyday expenses. These are investments meant to last at least more than a year. So when companies spend on fixed assets, they're planning for growth, they're betting on more demand, they expect more customers and more output. But right now, that spending is shrinking. In China, fixed asset investment dropped by 1.7%. That's for the first 10 months of 2025, a drop of 1.7%. It may look like a small number, but this is the steepest fall ever recorded for this period. And it's a red flag. Because when firms stop investing, it means that they're having doubts about their future and their profits. And that is why this number matters. It shows where the economy is headed. This investment slump is feeding into factory outputs. That's the second factor driving the slowdown. China's factories are churning out fewer goods. Look at industrial production. It rose by just 4.9% last month. Now, this is a measure of how much factories are making, industrial production. At 4.9%, this is the weakest growth rate for this year so far. It's also lower than what economists had predicted. Basically, every growth engine of China has been hit, whether it's spending on roads, bridges, or ports, or investments in fixed assets, or even the real estate sector. It has barely recovered from the housing crisis. In fact, there are fresh risks of default. So even the real estate crisis is far from over in China. Loans worth over $1 billion could default. These are backed by property assets. And banks across Asia have exposure to this debt. I'll give you some examples. In Hong Kong, there's a real estate giant called the Parkview Group. It has a loan worth $940 million. This loan is due this week. The company wants to extend the deadline by 1 year. But the talks are still stuck. Similarly, another company is on the brink. It's a firm called Gore Capital Partners in Hong Kong. They have to repay a loan worth $260 million. They've already missed a payment. The debt matured this week. Now, the creditor can declare a default at any time unless they're able to reach a new arrangement with their lenders. And big banks have exposure here. We're talking names like HSBC, the Hang Seng Bank, and several banks from Taiwan. They face a difficult decision. If they keep extending loan deadlines, they only delay the crisis. But if they force a default, they could suffer bigger losses. So the impact of China's slowdown could spread. It could hurt economies and entities beyond Chinese borders. Having said that, there's a silver lining too. China's economy will grow at 4.9% this year. This is despite all the challenges that we just discussed. The government's target was 5%, so 4.9 is very close to the mark. It's something to cheer, although it masks the underlying weakness. Because the problem is not just the numbers, it's the wider trend, the slowing growth, the eroding confidence, both at home and abroad. Long story short, the world's second largest economy is struggling to find its footing. It's not just China. The US economy is also going through a crisis. Yesterday, there was a meltdown in Wall Street. Almost $1 trillion were wiped out. Imagine that. $1 trillion in value gone in one day. It was the worst trading day for Wall Street in a month. We'll get to the reasons in a bit, but first the numbers. The S&P 500 index dropped 1.7%. Nasdaq plunged 2.3% and Dow Jones 1.7%. This drop was led by the tech companies. Let's look at the big ones. Elon Musk's Tesla plunged almost 6.7%. Nvidia dropped 3.6%. And AI company Palantir lost 6.5%. These numbers give you the full picture. As business journalists love to say, it was a bloodbath. The question is, what triggered it? Three things. Number one, the uncertainty around interest rates. America's central bank has cut interest rates twice this year, once in September and again in October. The markets were expecting another cut in December. Last month, the odds of a cut were 96%. Now it's down to 52%. Why? Thanks to the US government shutdown. No official data has been published in more than 40 days. No inflation data, no jobs data, no trade data. So the US central bank or the Federal Reserve is basically flying behind. Hence the confusion over a rate cut. Reason number 2 is the tech bubble. AI companies have led recent market rallies. They announce global investment deals. They invest billions of dollars. They pump up their stock and the index. But recently, experts have started asking a fundamental question. Will these investments pay off? A recent study found that 95% of all AI investments are not making money. Simply put, it could be a bubble. And this has led to a fall in investor interest. Same with companies like Tesla. For years, it was the pioneer in electric cars. Tesla had the first mover advantage. But now, most legacy car makers produce EVs, so suddenly Tesla is not unique anymore. Next is reason number 3, the Trump chaos. First the tariffs, then the fight with the central bank, then the shutdown, and now tensions in the Caribbean. Donald Trump is taking America on a crisis roller coaster. And this is bad news for the markets. Investors like stability and consistency in policy. But Trump likes the opposite. He thrives by creating confusion. The question is, what is next for the US economy? Well, first we need to see the data. How many jobs were created in October? How many were lost? What was the inflation rate? Only then can investors make an informed choice. Officials say the data will be published as soon as possible. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. The second piece is trade. Trump promised 90 trade deals in 90 days, and that was way back in April. In reality, he struck less than a dozen deals. So the pressure is mounting on the White House. The tariffs are slowly eating into household expenditure, that too with Christmas around the corner. So Trump is turning to Latin America. He is set to sign trade deals with 4 countries: Argentina, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Ecuador. As part of these deals, tariffs on food items will be cut. We are talking about things like coffee and banana. Tariffs will be cut. Same with Brazil. Trump picked a fight with Brazil earlier this year, but recently he's toned it down. He praised Brazilian President Lula in his United Nations speech. He also promised an expedited deal for Brazil, and looks like it is on track. US and Brazilian officials met this week. They're hoping to seal a deal, a trade deal, by the end of this month. So clearly, Trump is backtracking. The predictions of April are coming true. Yes, countries scampered to sign deals with Trump, but the tariffs also drove up inflation. Let's see how Trump navigates this quagmire. If you've been following our coverage this week, you know how the story has unfolded, and you know what air Delhi has been breathing. But if not, let me recap it for you. The air pollution in Delhi has been rising through October, and this week it reached its worst phase. Day 1, the air went into a dangerous range. Day 2, the numbers spiked even higher. Day 3, the city crossed 700 in the morning. Day 4, even the Supreme Court of India said the damage could be permanent. Today we are on day 5 and the trend has shifted. It's not a major shift, just a very slight one. Delhi's AQI was 399 today in the morning. 399, that's the 24-hour average. Now 399 is 1 point short of the severe category. Just 1 point. But it's not something to celebrate. AQI is your air quality index. It is a scale that tells you how dirty the air is. The safe level is below 100. Delhi is at 399. That's nearly 4 times the safe limit. So the air is still hazardous, and the relief is only on paper, not in the lungs. The question is, why is this happening? Meteorologists have a simple answer: light winds, low temperatures, and a temperature inversion. An inversion is like a lid on the city. It traps pollution close to the ground and it stops fresh air from moving in. The result is smog, toxic air, and breathing difficulty for millions of people. The government has imposed stage 3 restrictions. Construction work has been curbed and schools are holding hybrid classes. But these restrictions have not made a big difference yet, and the story has now moved beyond health and politics. It has now become a market story, an economic story. Because when pollution rises, buying patterns change. And this year, the change is sharper than ever. Air purifiers are flying off the shelves. Stores across Delhi say that sales have jumped by 60 to 70%. Some stores say they used to sell 10 units in a week. Now they sell 40 units in just 3 days. Same with online orders. Platforms like Amazon and Flipkart are seeing a massive spike. So air purifiers are no longer a luxury, they have become a necessity. And here is the part that we must understand. Not all purifiers work the same way. So the kind of air purifier you buy matters very much. Research shows the most effective ones use a true HEPA filter. HEPA stands for High Efficiency Particulate Air. It is a special filter made of very tight fibers. It traps tiny particles like PM 2.5 that your eyes cannot see. It traps them and it keeps them from entering your lungs. Without a true HEPA filter, the machine is just a fan. This is why consumers are moving towards models with true HEPA. At the same time, many are buying purifiers with activated carbon too. Carbon removes odors and certain gases. So these machines are now selling out across price ranges. Meanwhile, mask sales have also risen. Some pharmacies in Delhi say demand has gone up by 40%, 40. But do know this, not every mask can protect you from pollution. Surgical masks are popular, but they do not work well against smog. They're loose, they let air leak from the sides, and they're designed for large droplets, not for the pollution particles. Which is why doctors recommend N95 or KN95 masks. These masks fit tightly around your nose and mouth, they filter the smallest particles, and they give you far better protection on high pollution days. So how do you survive this toxic air? Keep your windows closed when the AQI is high, which is pretty much all the time. Use an air purifier with a true HEPA filter and wear an N95 mask if you step out. These are not long-term solutions, let me add. This is just some basic protection. And it's the most unfortunate story that we tell every year. Clean air should not become something that you have to buy. It should be something that you can just breathe. Staying with India, the big political story today is Bihar. The state's election results were announced today, and the big headline is this: the ruling NDA has won a historic victory. Let's look at the numbers first. The election was billed as a two-way fight. On one side, the ruling NDA, the National Democratic Alliance. This is the group led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, the BJP. They were also ruling the state of Bihar. On the other side was the Mahagathbandhan, meaning the Grand Alliance. This included the regional RJD party and the Congress party. Now look at the results. The Bihar Assembly has 243 seats. Out of this, the NDA is set to win around 200 seats. The BJP around 90 seats. Its partner JDU more than 80 seats. Now this is a very impressive tally because the majority mark is 122. The two-third majority is 162, but the NDA is set to win over 200 seats. Now the other side. The Mahagathbandhan is set to win less than 40 seats. It's a big letdown for the opposition alliance. They were talking about a close contest during the campaign, but clearly it wasn't one. Beyond the numbers, let's look at two questions tonight. One, why is this result significant? And two, what worked in the NDA's favor? The result is significant because of three reasons. One, the political importance of Bihar. This is the third most populated state in the country. The third most populated state in India. It is home to around 130 million people. Out of these, 74 million are voters. This gives Bihar a lot of weight in national politics. They send 40 lawmakers to the Indian Lok Sabha. That's the lower house of parliament. Reason number two, the context. The BJP had suffered a setback in the 2024 national election. Until then, the party had a majority on its own, but in 2024, they had to rely on allies to form a government. Many experts wondered if the party's dominance was waning. Then came a string of state elections, first in Haryana, then in Maharashtra, and now in Bihar, and the BJP and its allies managed to sweep all three, meaning they have stemmed the losses of 2024. Finally, reason number three, Bihar is key to India's growth story, not because the state is a growth engine, but because it's a laggard. This is the poorest state in the whole country. 1 in 3 Bihari families live in poverty. Look at the per capita income. In Bihar, it's around $360. That's 5 times less than the income in Kerala, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. Also 2 times less than West Bengal. I'm sure you get my point. If India wants to grow, then Bihar must grow, and there is no reason it can't. 40% of the state's population is under 18 years of age. 23% of the population is between 18 and 29 years of age. So we're talking about a young, energetic state. What it needs is good policies. Which brings us to the second question. What worked for the NDA in this election? Again, there were three main factors. Number one, the consolidation of women voters. This was clear when the turnout data came out. Bihar logged a total turnout of 67.13%. That's the highest ever in the state's history. But the story does not end there. Women outvoted men in 37 out of 38 districts in Bihar. More women voters than men. Only the capital, Patna, was the exception. Turnout among women was 71%, and among men it was only 63%. And the NDA was ready to capitalize. Last month, they implemented a cash transfer scheme for women, 10,000 rupees to 14 million women. Clearly, that had an impact. Factor number two is a seamless coalition. All NDA parties were on the same page. They basically harnessed momentum off each other, and that shows in their numbers. Look at the case of junior NDA partner LJP. They contested 29 seats. They're winning around 20 of them, meaning the alliance was a well-oiled machinery. And the other side, well, it was quite the opposite, the story. That's the third reason. The Mahagathbandhan was battling a bad history. Their previous governments were called Jungle Raj or Jungle Rule. Plus, they had a weak link in the Congress. Their leadership focused on election integrity, but reports say the voters were more concerned about other issues like jobs, caste and safety. A clear disconnect between the ground and the leadership. I'm sure more analysis will be done in the days ahead, but the biggest lesson from Bihar today is this. You cannot rest on your past success. You must hit the ground, you must talk to people, and you must listen to their concerns. Another night, another wave of strikes. This is the story of Ukraine. Last night, they faced a fresh wave of Russian attacks. Ukrainian capital Kiev came under intense drone and missile fire. Multiple districts reported blasts. High-rise buildings were damaged. Fires broke out in several neighborhoods, and dozens of people were rescued from smoke-filled blocks. And it wasn't just Kiev. Another Ukrainian city also reported a drone strike. In response, they hit back. Kiev launched its own strikes deep inside Russia. The Ukrainians hit a ship, an oil depot, and residential buildings. So both sides are now assessing the damage as the cycle of violence continues. Here's a report.
A major Russian assault hit Kiev overnight. Officials say drones and missiles targeted the capital and several regions. It triggered fires, injuries, and widespread damage, and for Kiev, the impact was visible across almost every district. Ukrainian authorities say around 430 drones and 18 missiles were used in the attack. President Volodymyr Zelensky called it a calculated strike on civilians and infrastructure. At least 4 people have been reportedly killed. Nearly dozens more were injured. The strikes began after midnight on Friday. Sirens sounded across the capital. Moments later, explosions appeared over central Kiev. Gunfire lit up the sky. Fires spread in high-rise blocks. Windows were blown out. Residents were escorted out by firefighters as emergency crews moved rapidly through neighborhoods. More than 40 people were rescued from damaged buildings. By morning, debris covered courtyards, pavements, and roads.
My first thought was, if only no one had died. House can be rebuilt, but people and animals matter most.
Further south, another strike hit Odessa. A Russian drone damaged an energy facility and triggered a fire. 1 person was injured. Nearby homes were affected. In response, Ukraine launched its own strike on Russia. A Ukrainian drone hit the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. Local authorities said a docked ship, an oil depot, and several apartment buildings were damaged. 3 crew members and 1 resident were reportedly injured. A state of emergency was declared, and shelters were opened for displaced residents. The latest attacks are part of a larger pattern. Both sides have been stepping up long-range attacks on each other for weeks now. Russia has intensified strikes on Ukraine's energy network, rail systems, and residential districts. Ukraine has also increased its own long-range drone operations. Recent targets included refineries, oil depots, and logistics points deep inside Russia. Meanwhile, the fighting has also intensified on the Eastern Front. Russian troops have pushed further into Donetsk and Luhansk, while a ceasefire is nowhere in sight. Kiev's allies have been pressurizing Moscow to come to the negotiating table. However, Russia has reportedly demanded that Ukraine must surrender more territory in the east if the war needs to end. Kiev has said it would not accept those terms. So, for now, this cycle of violence continues. Ukraine is facing a new wave of attacks every few days, and each strike shows how the conflict is widening, deepening, and moving further away from any immediate resolution.
In Tokyo, the sun rises early, anywhere between 5 and 7 a.m., depending on the season, of course. But even the sun has someone beating it to the punch. Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. Last week, while most of Tokyo was deep asleep, Prime Minister Takaichi summoned her aides to the office. The time was 3 a.m. 3 in the morning. The mission was to prepare for a budget committee hearing, one that was scheduled just 6 hours later. And here's the thing, this meeting was not unusual. For Prime Minister Takaichi, this is routine. A lifestyle carved from the old Japanese creed, work, work, work. The Prime Minister says she sleeps for just 2 hours, 4 if she is lucky. Takaichi admits it is bad for her skin, but for her career, apparently it is doing wonders. And she wants it for her colleagues too. Takaichi has asked her party members to work like a horse. Now, all of this may sound inspirational, the Prime Minister working day and night, but the context here is very important. Because this is Japan we are talking about. This is a country that has a word called karoshi. Do you know what it means? It means death by overwork. The Japanese literally have a word for it. Karoshi is death by overwork, and it is something that Japan has seen a lot of. It is tied to their national story. You see, Japan's economy boomed through the 1970s and 1980s. People thought it was hard work. Well, some of it was. But the growth was also because their industries were modern, their unions were disciplined, and their savings were high. The long hours were a cultural expression. They were not an economic necessity. Yet, the culture only hardened. So much so that it started taking lives. That's what gave birth to the term karoshi. And it continues till date. Even today, the average Japanese citizen sleeps for 7 hours and 1 minute. That is 38 minutes less than the global average. The workday does not end when you leave your office. You have to hang out with your colleagues, you have to have a drink with your boss, you have to eat ramen at midnight with acquaintances, and only then does your workday end. It's both problematic and unsustainable. So when the Prime Minister of this country says sleep is optional, it reinforces a culture that is already punishing people. Japan is already tired, its workers are tired, and it shows in their plummeting birth rate. But here's the other problem. Takaichi is not alone in this gospel of tirelessness. In fact, she joins a global choir of high achievers, those who swear by brutal hours. Elon Musk once said, "No one changed the world working 40 hours a week." Jeff Bezos says he prefers work-life harmony, not balance. Narayan Murthy wants India to try a 70-hour work week. Jack Ma once called a 12-hour, 6-day schedule a blessing. Indra Nui says work-life balance does not exist. Shah Rukh Khan once said rest is a sin. There's a clear pattern here. Successful people often believe the secret to success is more work, more hours, more sacrifice, more coffee. It sounds nice because it sounds true. And effort does matter. Commitment matters. Nobody wins a marathon by jogging for 15 minutes a day. But here's the unspoken truth. These people are exceptions. They are statistical anomalies. If everyone did what they do, we would not become a planet of Elon Musks, and thank God for that. We would become a planet of burnout. So what do? The answer is tricky. Hard work does matter. No nation, no company, no individual grows on leisure alone. But there is a limit to human productivity. No one, not even the most successful people on earth, can outrun biology forever. You can push your body. You can stretch your mind. But if you live your entire life at 3 a.m., eventually something cracks. The very thing that makes work worth doing, your ideas, your energy, they start fading when you run on fumes. So maybe the real lesson is not work like a horse. Maybe it's this: work hard when you must, but also rest when you can. In the end, work-life balance is about sustainability. Tensions are escalating further in the Caribbean. The US military has attacked one more Venezuelan boat. That's 20 boats attacked in 2 months, plus around 80 people killed without trial, 80 people killed. Until now, this was a case-by-case operation, but now the US has announced a new mission. They're calling it Operation Southern Spear. They say the aim is to defeat narco-terrorists. But one statement from the US Secretary of War, who's basically their defense minister, his statement suggests something more. He says the Western Hemisphere is America's neighborhood, so America will protect it. Does this signal an expansion of operations? And is Venezuela ready for a looming conflict? Our next report tells you.
You wouldn't want to be Nicolas Maduro right now. You look out into the coast, and what do you see? 100,000 tons of lethal American firepower heading your way. The USS Gerald Ford, the largest warship in the world, and the US military isn't done yet. On Thursday, the Secretary of War announced a new mission, Operation Southern Spear, focusing on the Caribbean. This mission will be led by the US military's Southern Command, located in Florida. The Secretary's announcement coincided with another strike by the US, the 20th such strike on alleged Venezuelan drug boats. Put together, these strikes have killed around 80 people, but the worst could be yet to come. The US has deployed 9 warships and multiple aircraft to the Caribbean. They have more than 15,000 soldiers ready and waiting. It's the largest US build-up in the region in generations. The question is, will President Donald Trump pull the trigger? This week, Trump was reportedly presented with military options. One is to strike Venezuelan military targets, another is to target drug trafficking routes. And yet another is to take out President Maduro. The Venezuelan leader is preparing for that possibility. The country has mobilized around 200,000 soldiers. Maduro himself is out on the streets trying to rouse the people. He accused the US of inventing excuses to invade.
Now imperialism is inventing an even more bizarre narrative. Since they cannot say that Maduro has weapons of mass destruction, since they cannot say that we have hidden biological or chemical weapons, they invent a bizarre narrative.
The start of Southern Spear could mark a turning point. The War Secretary did not mention Venezuela. Instead, he talked about narco-terrorists in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that could suggest an escalation. Venezuela isn't the only country that Trump has accused of narco-terrorism. He's accused the likes of Colombia and Mexico as well. So could Southern Spear be expanded into a regional operation? That's the worry amid this generational military build-up.
For our next story, let's start with three songs. Three songs that have topped the Billboard and Spotify charts. They're massive, viral and everywhere, except nobody knew who the artist was because there was no artist. The songs were generated by artificial intelligence, not helped by AI, not partially tweaked by AI, not a human with an AI assistant, but fully machine-made. And most people did not even notice. Let's tell you about these songs. A track called Walk My Walk hit #1 on Billboard's country digital song sales. Another, Living on Borrowed Time, went viral. Both were from a group called Breaking Rust, except Breaking Rust is not really a group, it's more like a workflow. Lyrics are generated here, vocals are generated here, they're mixed by software, and they're uploaded by a human being. And then there was a Dutch song that topped the global viral chart, an AI-generated protest anthem. It went so viral that the song and the entire catalog suddenly disappeared from Spotify and YouTube. Spotify says it did not remove it. The owner says he doesn't know what happened. But here's the crazy part. A survey across 8 countries asked 9,000 people to tell the difference between AI tracks and human-made ones. And guess what? 97% failed. 97% people, almost the entire sample, could not tell which was which means if you thought you would just know the difference, you probably wouldn't. And it's not just ordinary people, even professional musicians. They were getting confused too. And here's where it gets scary. On platforms like Deezer, 50,000 AI-generated songs are uploaded every single day. 50,000 songs every day. That's 34% of all daily music uploads. And remember, this is only the AI music that the detection system manages to catch. So the real number is probably higher. This is not a wave of AI songs, it's a tsunami of AI music being created by bots who don't spend 5 years on one album. So who is making this music? It's not musicians, not producers, not singers. Mostly it's random people trying to earn passive income. There are entire blogs and channels that teach you how to do this. They teach you how to use AI to generate 200 songs a week. So you can siphon money from the royalty pool. This is not creativity, this is content farming. And it pays, because the more tracks you upload, the higher the chance that one of them goes viral. And the machine really doesn't care if you're talented, it just needs volume. Also, AI music can sound good too. It sounds good now. In fact, it sounds almost too good. But here's the big question. When 50,000 AI songs upload every day, how does a real artist break through? Humans can't compete with machines that produce 24/7. Albums often take weeks, if not years, to make. A machine can generate hundreds of songs in a day. Also, what about creativity? How can a machine create a heartbreak song if it has never felt it? Or a love song if it doesn't have emotions? Now, many may argue the listener can't tell the difference, and that is true. But then, does the soul behind the music still matter? Will creativity soon just become a prompt? Right now, we are standing at the weird intersection. On one side, there's the entire music history, the entire history of music, messy, emotional, human. On the other side, there's a future where machines produce infinite songs. And the question is not whether AI can make music. Of course it can, it already has, and it has topped the charts. The real question is, do we redefine what art and creativity means? Because creativity used to be uniquely human, now it is automated. And if the world can't tell the difference, we might be the ones who need to catch up. Our final story tonight is about a major change coming to India's schools, not in the syllabus, but in how children learn to think. CBSE has drafted a new curriculum on artificial intelligence. CBSE is the Central Board of Secondary Education, and it has now prepared a draft framework for AI in schools. The new plan brings basic AI and computational thinking into early classes. We're talking about children starting as early as the third class, and it goes up all the way to class 12. The rollout is expected to begin next year. NCERT, that's the National Council for Educational Research, is now reviewing the draft before a national rollout. But here's the question: can India scale this plan in a way that keeps teachers ready and classrooms equipped? Here's our report.
Indian schools may soon bring artificial intelligence into everyday lessons. CBSE, or the Central Board of Secondary Education, has drafted a new AI and computational thinking curriculum. It spans classes 3 to 12. Parts of the plan are expected to begin from the 2026 to 2027 academic year. The draft outlines how AI will enter classrooms in a phased and structured way. A panel of experts is being set up to study the document. The plan aligns with the National Education Policy 2020. It also aligns with the National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2023. Officials call this a nascent but significant step. The aim is to reinforce learning, thinking, and teaching. The framework uses the idea of AI for public good. The structure begins early. For classes 3 to 5, computational thinking will be embedded in subjects like language, maths, and environmental studies. For classes 6 to 8, students will be introduced to foundational AI concepts. Assessments will include projects and presentations. Handbooks and worksheets will support these grades. In classes 9 and 10, advanced computational thinking and intermediate AI are set to become compulsory subjects. In classes 11 and 12, core AI and machine learning concepts will be offered as electives. Teacher preparation is one of the focuses of the draft. Learning material, teacher guides, and digital content are expected by December this year. Teacher training will run through national programs and recognized institutions. Reports say maths and subject teachers will handle younger classes. Different teachers will reportedly work together in the middle grades. Computer science teachers may lead senior classes. The draft has now been sent to the NCERT, or the National Council for Educational Research and Training, for expert review. But rolling out will not be that easy. India reportedly has about 1.5 million schools. It has more than 248 million students and reportedly over 10.1 million teachers. While not all schools are aligned to CBSE, a system this large comes with natural challenges. Many schools still lack basic digital infrastructure. The country continues to face a persistent digital divide. Device access and connectivity vary widely across regions. Training teachers will also take time, especially for those new to AI tools. These hurdles are part of the transition, and countries worldwide are navigating similar shifts. The UAE, China, and Finland, among others, are also introducing AI into their schools. India is now working to develop its own model. The aim is to find an approach that fits its classrooms and its scale. The draft offers the first outline of that path, and the next few months will show how quickly India can move from plan to practice.
Do you use AI at work? Data says almost 75% of all workers do, but here's a piece of advice. You're not supposed to be using AI. If you're not supposed to be using AI, then don't. If you still go ahead, at least hide the trail. Unfortunately, one journalist in Pakistan did not get the memo. He used AI to write an article for a reputed English daily, but look at how the article ends. If you want, I can also create an even snappier front page style version with punchy one-line stats. That's a ChatGPT prompt. The writer forgot to remove it from his write-up, and even the editor missed it. What followed was some epic trolling. now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro gets mobbed by the crowd in a Caracas youth march. The world's best aerial athletes take to the sky for the ultimate obstacle course, and the Northern Lights illuminates the skies over the United States. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1969, Apollo 12 lifted off from Florida. This was a second manned mission to the surface of the moon, but it came chillingly close to disaster. The flight was hit by 2 lightning strikes right after its launch. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend. Tonight, we begin with India's border with China. 1 year ago, both sides agreed to a truce. It ended a 4-year-long military standoff. And since then, the border has stayed largely quiet. But New Delhi is not lowering its guard. Instead, it is reworking its strategy to secure the Himalayas. Earlier this week, a new airbase was operationalized in Ladakh.